This is episode 37 of the Hybrid Coaching Podcast. I'm really excited for this one because both James Kelly and my significant other, Lauren Weeks and Georgie Vesely, are taking over. These two women are two of the kindest, nicest souls you will ever meet on this planet, at least that I have. And I really appreciate both of them being able to take over and do this podcast. They get to as many questions and topics as they can that were submitted on Lauren's post. And I'm really excited for you guys to be able to listen. Let's make hybrid fitness work for you.
Okay, you want me to start it?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi guys, welcome to the Hybrid Coaching Podcast. Today we do not have JK or Anthony. You have Georgie and myself for today. So the significant others of your normal podcasting hosts. I'm going to quickly introduce Georgie. So Georgie, your background, I know right now you're studying nutrition, right?
Correct. I am, yes.
And we're going to be going over questions that people sent in. And I actually got a couple nutrition questions. And if you don't mind, I'm probably going to direct them more towards you because I would feel more comfortable with somebody who's actually studying this to answer those questions versus like my personal bias of what works for just me and maybe not a general population.
Yeah. Test my knowledge. Let's do it.
And then before we start too, I didn't even say it like when we were talking earlier. Congratulations. Georgie
thank
and
you.
JK
Got my
are
ring on.
Engaged. So JK texted Anthony before he was going to propose to you, like right before, saying, all right, I'm going to do it. And then we didn't hear from him for hours.
We're like, left you hanging.
Yeah. We're like, what happened? And then eventually, it was a couple hours later, we got a text from you saying, hey, JK's phone died. Just wanted to give you an update. And I was like, oh my God.
I
was stressing. I'm not even
He told me the whole story after that. Apparently he had told Anthony like when he bought the ring and like Anthony was fully like on the journey with him. And then of course his phone dies like right after it happened. We were on a FaceTime, I think, with his mother, and his phone died, which was not ideal. And then he remembered that he left you guys hanging. So I quickly had to text you so you didn't think anything bad happened.
I was like, oh my God, did she say no? Like, did he drop the ring? Because he told us he was going to do it in the ocean. I was like, are they searching for it right now? I had no idea.
Well, no, it was all okay. All went to plan. It was very exciting.
It is really exciting. I'm putting you on the spot a little bit. Do you know time frame of when you guys would like to get married?
It's quite funny. Ever since we've got engaged, I think my mum has asked me every single day about when we're having the wedding. I think we're thinking probably like a 12-month engagement. Like we don't want it too long, but it also, as you would be aware, depends on when James is not racing. So, and when he's actually in Australia. So we're going to try to figure out a time, maybe sometime next year, I think, possibly. Or the end of this year would be really nice. End of 2025.
It is tricky with this like sport all in the equation because it's going to be an occasion you want to celebrate and it's hard. It's definitely going to be hard to do that with the amount of energy you're both putting into like other parts of your life. So
yeah. And that's what we've found. We were going to rush into the ceremony, like into the wedding and all the celebrations around it, but we really want to sort of look forward to that time. And if we're rushing it and trying to squish it in before a certain race of his, we just won't get the same enjoyment out of it. So I think we just need to find a solid month or so that we can just really celebrate all of, the pre and post wedding things that everyone does. So it's just a matter of finding the time, but I think I need to start getting organized with the bookings of everything and all that fun stuff.
One positive help maybe that the sport will bring is, I guess, depending on where all these big races are next year, you'll have like 5 options for a honeymoon.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a very good point.
If you want to tack it on to that.
A High Rocks honeymoon.
Uh, but I guess getting us on to track. I put out a questionnaire yesterday actually, and just to see if anybody had any questions or topics that they would like us to answer or address while the boys were taking the week off. And there were a couple repeats of the same one, so I'm gonna do my best to make sure I don't repeat a question that's very
Mhm.
similar to one that we've already touched on.
Yeah.
And then I think there are going to be a couple that come up that maybe neither of us have necessarily experience with, but we
Yeah.
could kind of just give our best
Our
answer to
opinion.
that, and how
Yeah.
that can relate to the general population.
Yeah. And thanks to everyone who did submit the questions. It's cool to know people are
Yeah,
interested in our opinions.
yeah. There were just forewarning, there were quite a lot of female-based questions
Mm.
that came through. Not to say that that won't be helpful to the male listeners out there, but there were quite a few that were specific to females.
Very fitting for our female takeover this week.
Yes. I'm going to start with more of a fun one. Somebody asked, who would win mixed doubles, Georgie and JK or Anthony and Lauren? Do you want to start with that answer? Or do you want?
When you sent this one through, James didn't like my answer. I instantly was like, well, obviously not us.
I actually
To
don't
be
think
honest.
that's true. I think we'd be really close. I don't, not that I'm cutting you off for your answer, but I don't know. Um,
Well, I think we're both just being probably too modest. But I said to James, with doubles, you're only as good as your slowest runner. And I believe I am probably the slowest runner out of all four of us. So that's where my answer came from. But I think it would be a lot of fun, to be honest. I think there'd be a lot of um, banter chat on the course. I think few shoulders, few elbows here and there. But on that topic, you came up with a little suggestion about a variation of a Hyrox race that we could have a crack at.
Yeah, I had suggested, I might have to pull up what Anthony put in, but I had suggested why don't we do girls versus guys and make it a swim version.
Yeah.
Um, and part of my reasoning behind that is because both you and I have a swim background.
Bit biased, but I'm all
So,
for it.
so I know Anthony's still a good swimmer, and I would assume JK, from what I know with some
Yeah.
of his training too, is also a good swimmer. But there's definitely an advantage when you come from like a traditional swimming background and have spent the practices, and like
Yeah.
they start us doing doubles very young. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so there's lots of
100.
strokes and laps, I think,
This
behind.
is probably going a bit off topic, but I'm more interested from my end. Do you still do a bit of swimming now in your training? As more like maybe even like a lower impact active recovery or something like that?
I used to do it quite a bit more. I actually started looking up master swim teams because
Mm.
I much prefer for swimming a team atmosphere versus
Yeah.
just going and doing it on my own.
Yeah.
And I did find two locally, and I think I'm gonna sign up. And I don't
Cool.
plan to do their meets. I just kind of want to be part of the practice.
Yep.
Um, but the one of them, like their pool is under construction, and that's the closer one to me. So the other one is going to be a little bit further of a drive. So I think it would not be like a 5 day a week kind of thing, but
Mm.
I do much better with that type of working out, like a swim practice in a team environment where I'm just kind of
Yep.
like following the person ahead of me.
Yeah. And James and I were actually talking to someone this week about how much value like swimming can be for your aerobic fitness and even like transferable to Hyrox fitness. So I think there is such a like not many people are doing it as well. Well, that you see. Like I think it really could be so beneficial to your
It's a lot
fitness
of
with that.
breathing exercises without even being intentional about it too, because I mean, your face is in the water the majority of the
Yeah.
time, so you do have to practice like breath
Yeah.
holding and when to take a breath and like getting enough oxygen in to be able to
Mm,
hold through a couple different strokes. And um, just from like my previous experience, and I'm sure your coaches have done this for you as well, is we do specific breathing workouts where
mm.
you're not allowed to pick up your head for 13 strokes. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
you have to swim like right, left 13 times before you're
Yeah.
allowed to take a breath. So I think while it's not fun to do that, I think there's a lot of benefit that could be seen
Absolutely.
outside of swimming too.
Yeah. And when else would you, in what other like aspect of your training would you ever be doing that? Hey, like holding your breath and teaching yourself to hold your breath. So I agree. I think it's very valuable. Now, big question. When it's freezing cold in wherever you're living, Vegas, are you swimming outdoors or indoors?
So it is cold, but not as cold as Salt Lake was. And it's really it's super interesting. The mornings and the evenings are brisk. They're pretty chilly, but in the middle of the day, we're in the 70s plus. Like it's
Yeah, okay.
so it kind of depends on the time of day you go. If there are outdoor pools, they are heated. Um,
Oh, okay.
I
Interesting.
prefer the outdoor personally, but I would do indoor.
Indoor. Outdoors nice. Indoor gets a little bit stuffy. I work in a pool. I teach little kids swimming, and it's indoor, and it gets so stuffy. You can imagine in the peak of Australian summer as well. It is so hot in there. So I definitely love an outdoor pool when it's not cold.
What ages are the kids that you're teaching?
On average, I take about like 3 years to 4 years old. Does range. Sometimes a little bit older, up to like 10 years. But I love like the 3, 4 year olds. So where they're um, just kind of learning their survival skills, but then also like adding in their arms and yeah, just getting familiar with the water. It's so cute. I love it.
I wish you were closer because I'm looking to get Lily into swim lessons right now, and I would
Yeah.
love to have her work with you.
Yeah. Does she go in like is she confident in the water?
She loves
Or
baths. She does
yeah,
like going to the pool. But
yeah,
she has no like we haven't given her any sort of structured lessons. So she
yeah,
like I I mean you would never trust a child like anyway, but
yeah,
I I wouldn't be able to be 2 feet away from her. Like that's how little
yeah,
I would trust her in the water right now.
yeah. But I think the first thing, like, as long as she's enjoying the water, that's the first step. Like when you see kids that are really scared and terrified of the water, that's a lot harder for that transition to get them in and actually like learning the survival skills. But yeah, the most important thing, I guess, especially at her age, is as bad as it sounds, like if she was to fall in the water, like can she find the wall? Can she, know how to survive? And obviously she's quite young at the moment, but that's yeah, it's such an important skill, especially like where we're living on the coast. It's like, yeah, I take my job very seriously because I'm like, these kids need to know how to survive.
Yeah, it's important. When we were looking for houses, like there were a lot of options that had pools, and I just was like, not
Yeah,
as much as I
yeah.
would love a pool, I'm just not
So
comfortable
yeah, having
with
a kid around
yeah.
that. Yeah, I
Like
agree. It's very, very scary. But yeah, no, definitely get her into swimming lessons. That'd be awesome.
I'm gonna move on to the next question. Next one was how does your air runner paces compare to your road running paces? Do you use the air runner often?
I actually don't know because the gym I go to doesn't have an air runner. So I used to, but like I probably am not a good one to answer. You use one regularly, don't you?
Um, Fairly regularly. If I had the like we do have both, and we're very privileged to
Mm,
have both, but most of the time I gravitate towards the motorized treadmill,
yeah.
because I do struggle to keep my paces where I want them to be on the air runner, and not only to get to pace, but to like hold a pace. The effort that
Yeah.
I'm putting in is significantly higher than if I were to be running on the
Yeah.
road or running on a motorized treadmill. So it's short answer to that. It doesn't compare. Not even close for me. But that is another thing, like you were saying earlier, that it's very person dependent. So I follow a lot of Dylan Scott's stories, and he seems to be able to put out on the air runner just as well, if not better. And he could correct me on that than he does like on a road or a motorized treadmill, which
Wow.
is
Yeah.
fascinating to me because I am the complete opposite. So I
Yeah.
think that is also something that is very person dependent, but I think
Mm.
more people skew towards how I feel in that like it's significantly harder to get to pace and to hold the paces.
Yeah. When I have used them in the past, I definitely agree with that. I mentally really struggle on an air runner because it just bounces up and down and you're like, oh, I just want to keep it to one pace. But I know James, for example, he uses the motorized treadmill for all of his thresholds. So you can really dial into that pace. And I'm sure you're the same with that. Whereas when it comes to, say, a compromised running workout, he'll use the air runner so then he can just jump on and off. So I guess it just depends on the workout, doesn't it?
It does, and it is easier in a compromised workout to just jump on, especially if you're in like a gym setting,
Mm.
because most of the motorized treadmills turn off after a
Turn
certain
off.
amount of time.
Yeah.
And so that's
Does
just
yours turn off or does yours
no,
stay on?
mine stays on again. Like,
Oh, that's the dream.
yeah, it's really nice. But
Oh,
anytime I drop into a gym, it like if I'm doing a threshold run, like I have to play with the settings so that it knows I'm still there because
yeah.
otherwise it starts slowing down.
Yeah. I know, like the gym that James goes to with the treadmill he's on for his thresholds, he just has to do the every few seconds, like when he jumps off, every few seconds just hits his foot on the treadmill to let it know
Know that
he's
I'm
still
there.
there. That would, yeah, that would
If he
kill me. At
wants to
least
be
my,
a little less active, what I've found to work is like just pressing up on the speed by point one and then bringing it back down by point one. So
mm,
it knows that like that way I don't
okay.
have to put I don't know if that'll work on the one he's using, but that's what I've
Yeah.
done so that I don't have to actually expend
Move your
any
leg.
energy
Yeah.
at all.
Preserve all that energy you've
Saving
got.
all of it.
Yeah.
Um, next question. Are there any other sports you would like to try?
Oh, oh. You go first. I need to think about my answer.
So it kind of like I hate having it depends, but it really depends if like are you asking dream sport? Like what can I do that I don't want to ever say I'm not capable of something, but like is like very
Yeah.
far out of reach or something a sport that I could transition into and still like probably find some
Go
success
dream
in.
sport. I think that would be cool. What's your dream sport like, whether you're capable or not?
I do you guys call it soccer or football?
Soccer, yeah. You do that.
For
Wow.
sure. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that was just like my childhood dream. I would 100% if I could be a soccer player and it's a team sport. Like I much
Yeah.
prefer team sports to an individual sport. That would be my 100% answer if I could do it.
Wow. So did you play it growing up?
hmm Yeah. Since like probably as young as you could be thrown into it until I stopped playing for like a team like when I graduated high school because when I moved on to college, swimming was my college sport.
Yeah.
But I've played in some adult leagues
Mm.
after college, and they were a ton of fun. And now with High Rocks being more of a profession than a hobby, because I was still playing some sports when I originally started High Rocks, but now
Mm.
like the risk of injury
Of course, yeah.
is just way too high. And to, to give example of that, my sister like still plays in rec leagues, and she's torn her ACL twice now as an
Oh,
adult. And the first
yeah.
one was in a rec soccer league
So that would definitely put you off doing it
for a
at this
while.
point in
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. And I feel like soccer players would clock up a lot of Ks running, depending what position
I
you're in,
wish
obviously.
I
But
mean, they probably wouldn't let us wear something anyway, but I wish I had tracked like while I
yeah,
was playing. My position was center mid, so that allows you to kind of go up and down in all parts of the field. So I'd love to know how
yeah,
much
be a
we were
lot.
actually putting in.
Yeah. Um, I have thought about mine, and I think it's somewhat realistic. Like, I think at some point in my life I will do this. I really want to do an Ironman. Um, Probably should start with a triathlon, but my goal, like, I'd love to do an Ironman. I think it's so cool, like, just for fun, I guess, like, not doing it competitively for a time or anything. I just think it'd be so, like, so cool. I don't know.
I
And it'd
love
be
that
such
answer. It's
an
super
achievement.
intriguing. Do you have like a dream location to do that at?
Probably on the coast here. You know, they do actually, I don't know if they do Ironmans on the coast. I know they do triathlons here all the time. There's like a Mooloolaba triathlon, which is like just down the road. There's a Noosa triathlon. So I actually thought I went through this phase literally just the other month, and I was on Marketplace looking to buy a bike, like a cheap bike, because as you know that
They're
they're
so
not
expensive.
not the cheapest hobby. So, and then I kind of I was like, oh, it's so much effort. So then I've like backtracked a bit, but eventually I will get there. Um, yeah, I think it would just be such an amazing feeling. Like, you would go through the motions during the race. Like, I think mentally it'd be really tough. Probably almost similar to you doing your 100K, which I'm sure we'll get into at some point. Um, Definitely mentally, yeah, tough, but be so rewarding at the
There's
end.
probably so many ups and downs because if we're talking about the Ironman distance, I
Yeah,
mean, at the elite men's level, I think I'd have to look it up, but I think it's in like the 7 hour range, plus or minus a half hour. For the elite men, I think the elite
so yeah,
women are like closer to the
yeah,
8+ hour
yeah.
range. Like, and that's for the elite winning world championship time. Like
That's fast.
average
Yeah,
times are probably 12 to
12, 13, yeah.
17 hours, somewhere in that
Yeah,
range. So the amount of like mental ups and downs a person probably has, no matter what level they're on, going through it, I'm sure is a
yeah,
journey in itself because like you're not going to have just one high. You're going to have multiple highs during that race,
yeah,
but you're also going to have multiple lows. So it's just kind of
yeah,
transitioning through that and figuring out like how to push
yeah,
through and knowing that you can push through and waiting for that low to become the next high.
yeah, 100%. I think you would learn so much about yourself and about your mental resilience, like, during the race, which I just think is so, like, empowering as well. That's why I almost want to just go hard and go straight into an Ironman, like, not do a triathlon distance to begin with. I'm just like, nah. But I don't know. Stay tuned. I might get there eventually.
Keep us updated. I
Yes.
will follow all the tracking if I'm not physically there,
Yeah.
to know. This one was a direct question to me. It says, "Who are you doing the relay with in Las Vegas?"
Mm.
So I'm doing an all four female team, and it'll be
Oh,
myself, Lauren Griffith, Kate Davey, and Zara Pelagiani. I say her name.
that is a killer team.
Yeah, I'm super
Oh my
excited.
gosh. That'll be
Um,
so fun. So have you worked out, you might not want to give away your
oh no.
strategy, but have you worked out your stations and where everyone's going?
We did work out our stations. I don't remember exactly where everybody is, but I am, if I'm remembering correctly, I'm the push and the wall balls.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I think I get to do open weight wall balls, which I am so excited for. I
Oh
think.
wow. Got
Cross
to
my
be
fingers.
careful not to throw it over
Yeah.
the
I think
wall ball target.
I did the doubles with Warren about a year ago and we were in the open category. And the first couple reps were definitely uh not where they were supposed to be, I guess.
Yeah, because you would never, well, yeah, you'd never train with a 4 kilo wall ball.
No, we
So,
don't have one.
oh, like,
So
perfect. So is all women's relay always open weight or
I thought so. I know this,
right?
I know this is a question I should have the answer to. But from my understanding, it's open weight for the all women. And I think it's
Yeah.
open weight even for mixed until that world championship race, and that's where they moved it to pro. Um,
Right. Okay. Yeah.
I
That
could be
confuses me all.
completely making that up right now. So if I
I think
am,
you'll,
you can write
I
it in
think,
the comments somewhere down there that
yeah,
you're
you
completely
guys
wrong,
let us
Lauren.
know. I think you're right because I remember doing a relay in Sydney and I did the push and I remember being able to like sprint with it, which means it was definitely open weight. So I will be very excited to see what you can do. You're like, it would be almost scary for you, like the lactic acid burn in your legs is going to be so bad, so
Fortunately, I'm
bad.
gonna have a really long break before I have
Yes,
to go again.
that's true. That's true.
If I'm right on the stations that I believe I
Yeah.
have,
Yeah.
that'll be a really long break, which means somebody else is getting a super short break.
Yeah. Oh
Um,
well. Good luck. We'll be cheering you on.
so I'm gonna combine these two questions. They're very, very similar. It was, what are your 2025 goals? And then somebody else asked, would love to hear both of your top three goals for 2025. I actually haven't thought about this, so I will think about it right this second. Do you have
Yep.
any off the top of your head?
You and me both. We can just go back and forth as we think of them. Um I goals. I've got, I guess, like a few things. If we're talking like, yeah, I guess as you mentioned at the start, I'm studying sports nutrition. So my goal would be to finish that and see what I can do with that. I haven't quite decided career wise how I want to manage that, but I would love to be able to finish that. And that would be like such an achievement for me. Um,
Before you move on, how long is the program you're in right now?
So it's self-paced actually, but it's like about a year and a half. So I could finish it a lot quicker, but because I'm working as well, I'm obviously slowly getting through it. But yeah, they roughly say it's about a year and a half, and then that's to get my. So it's actually a cert 4 in sports nutrition. Yeah, so and then I would have to decide whether I want to go back and do extra study to then become an accredited dietitian. But yeah.
Do they, towards the end of the study, do they incorporate like clinicals in terms of, do they make you go in person to work with somebody?
um not with this actual program, no. There's no, I was surprised about that as well. But I think I do know a few like nutritionists and dietitians on the coast here. So I'm actually going to go ask to do like work experience, like literally just work for free, buddy up with someone just like on my own accord, because I would love to like be able to just get that experience. So it actually doesn't require me to in the course, I don't think, unless I'm misinformed.
I
But
wasn't even sure if within the nutrition dietetics realm, if that was something that was normal.
mm,
Like I'm not sure. I come
yeah,
from, like, my most recent schooling was getting my nursing degree, and we did have like tons and tons of clinicals that we
of
had to do. And
course, yes.
I just wasn't sure if like that also was something that you had to do in the nutrition dietetics
I do like the
realm.
idea of practical. Like I'm very much a hands-on learner, so I would that, as I said, like I think I'll go out and seek my own like work
Yeah.
experience just because I think it's so valuable actually working in a workplace and seeing how things unfold as opposed to just doing the theory. But yeah, so I guess in terms of goals, that would definitely be something I'm like aiming towards this year. That's one of mine. Do you
It's a
have
big one.
something? Have you thought of something?
Um, well, I guess I'll touch on like one of the more recent, or yeah, recent things that I've been trying to chase after. And I'm very interested in like the ultra distance
Mm.
in sport. And I signed up for the wait list and then like skirted my way around the wait list a little bit. I had to send in like a resume to get into this race.
Really?
Yeah, it's it's so it's a golden ticket race, and it's also one of the nine world trail majors. Um, so it's super popular and it's a really competitive race, and I don't know where I stack up, and particularly with this one, it's a point to point race. It's not a like a lapped course.
Okay.
And there's more elevation loss than there is gain, which
Okay.
most people would be like, oh, that's great. I actually would prefer we were going in the opposite direction because I feel so much more comfortable climbing than I do descending.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Wait,
I'm super interested in how this is going to play out, but like goal wise, like I want to be competitive. Like I want to
yeah.
go in and I want to be able to like feel like I'm racing, not just completing it. Like I want to race this. And so like a goal is to be able to finish this race. Probably like lowest tier goal is to finish the race and
Yeah.
feel like I raced it and not
Yeah.
just went out there to complete it.
Yeah. So what's the longest distance you've done like in competition so far?
Um, so I've been saying that this is my first ultra, and technically that's not true. And only like there's a caveat in that in 2020 I did an event called Spartan Games, and it was like multiple events in a weekend, and one of the events was a 6 hour run, and they had us do a 5 mile lap up and down the mountain for as many laps as you could get in the 6 hours. So it was not an intentional ultra, but like there was
Mm.
enough time for me to get 6 laps, which ended up being 30 miles. So that's the longest I've done in my
What
life
does
and
that
in
equal?
competition.
I'm just doing a quick Google. 30 miles, 2 kilometers. I
Oh,
don't know
yeah.
miles. Okay, 48, roughly 48
48K.
kilometers. Wow. Okay,
And
crazy.
it's interesting because and I think unfortunately I'm going to be in the same place here, in that my fitness was good enough to get me through it on the day,
Yeah.
but I was so wrecked after.
Mm.
Um, More than, and granted, like we did so much that weekend, so I can't place it all on just this one event, but I think this one event had
Took it out of you.
it had a huge amount to do with it. But I came out of that weekend and I've never felt this way in my life, but like the world was cloudy. Like I don't even know how to explain it. Like everything seemed fuzzy. I had like no energy, super like just lethargic. But I think what I found the most interesting was like literally the world seemed fuzzy. I was like, I don't
Crazy.
know if that's
So do you
normal or
think that
healthy or
yeah, do you think that that is to do with, I don't know, the nutrition, or like, do you think you could have done anything different to prevent that? Or is that just, the running 30 miles, it's going to happen? Like, what do you put that down to?
so there was a lot of elevation gain and loss in that one, and I think I took a lot of damage on the downhill
Okay.
each lap
Yeah.
on that. In terms of nutrition, the again, you are for sure the expert, but my knowledge from 2020 until now in 2025 is so vastly different in
Yeah.
terms of like how I would approach one fueling
Yeah.
before, fueling during, and fueling after
Yeah.
for recovery. So
Yeah.
yes, there's tons of things that I think I could have done while I was in that fitness state that would have
Yeah.
made my recovery better after, that I
Yeah.
didn't do and just didn't have the knowledge or experience for.
Yeah. So, question then, how are you managing your training for High Rocks in parallel to the 100K Ultra? Like, are they transferable? Like, how are you doing that?
I can't say whether or not they're transferable yet. I think I'll need to try doing both a couple times before I can like
Sure.
truly and honestly answer that question. But in terms of training, I'm trying to keep what I would normally do to train for a high rocks um, as close to the same as possible. There are some things that I am doing a little bit differently. I'm adding a little bit more aerobic work. But then, like, as I had shown this past weekend, like, this weekend was a specific training for that ultra versus training for high rocks. And I haven't done many of those where I'm specifically targeting not the high rocks race, but this weekend was one of them. And it was kind of just designed to help prepare me for the length of that event, the descending in that event, running on tired legs, practicing fueling.
Yep.
What am I going to carry? How much can I carry? How am I going to
Yep.
take in like water and electrolytes and uh, kind of all basing it off of that. So, um, in terms of like training, it's been few things that I've actually tailored towards the ultra, but I do know that I do have to tailor some and practice some to be
Yep.
able to go in not completely blind.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a bit of fun for you as well, sort of like even just this past weekend, mixing it up a little bit and experimenting for what works for you. It is always fun, sort of adding, having a different goal as opposed to the same thing, training for high rocks all the time. So yeah, I'm sure that was fun for you.
It was a lot of fun, and I've gotten a couple messages asking like, why are you doing this when you're still like in the middle of like big high rocks training
Mm.
and while I understand that because it is a thought that's gone through my head before, like you like maybe I should wait to chase these dreams and goals until I'm like done trying to be competitive in the hybrid space. But then I thought like, what if I'm never done and then I never get to
Yeah,
chase like these dreams? So I'd rather do it now and I'll do the best that I can while managing both. But like I'm fit now. Like
yeah.
I don't want
Why
to let it
wait,
go.
sort of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And you never know, like as you said, it could like it could be so beneficial doing like the ultra training for high rocks. Like it's not going to hurt, sort of thing. Well, it probably will hurt you, but
The recovery after the race is for sure gonna hurt, but it's okay. Like
yes,
it's so
yes,
far out from Worlds that I will
yeah.
recover before Chicago.
So correct me if I'm wrong. You race the Vegas major, and then is the ultra the following
The
weekend?
Ultra's the following weekend. So
Yeah.
um I think it's the 8th or the 7th or the 8th.
Mm.
So High Rocks is January 31st through February 2nd, and then it's February 7th or 8th is the
Yeah.
date of
Yeah.
the
Oh,
Ultra
I'm
weekend.
excited for you. That'll be so fun. We'll be tracking you for sure.
In terms of, so this person asked for 3 goals. Do you want me to move on to the next question, or were there any that you wanted to add into that?
No,
Okay.
I'm okay. I haven't really thought of anything else.
Okay. Okay, so there's a couple like female-based questions now that I'm gonna bring in. And one of the first one was, I would love to know how and if you manage your training around your period/cycle. And we kind of talked about this like offline a little bit, just because I don't think either of us were sure if we were coming from the same place, but I do believe we both were. Do you want to start in terms of kind of our
Yeah, sure.
standpoint on that?
I know it's such a thing, and like I speak to different females about this, because I have never been one to train um in line with my cycle, and that comes down to the fact that I don't get affected by my cycle. So um even to the point, and I'm sorry to females out there that do struggle with like period pains and everything, but like I don't get cramps. I don't get mood swings or anything like that. So I'm quite fortunate in that way, which then means I actually don't change my training based around my cycle because I don't feel the energy low, like low energy or, mood swings or anything like that. So I've always just kept my training very consistent, and I've never had to change it. So Yeah, I think you're quite similar in that way.
Yeah, I would say I align very much with that. I mean, I would have to double check, and Anthony might have a different answer for the mood swing one, but but for the rest of it, so I personally don't love the like David Goggins mindset of like go hard, and that's just like
Mm,
not something that resonates with me.
yep.
Um, so it's hard for me to answer this question kind of along those lines, but like if it is like maybe a little bit harder, I choose to just not let it change or affect how I'm training. Like, for the most part, I agree with you. I feel like my symptoms are fairly minimal, but I do know that that's not the case for everybody. For like my sister, for example, I know gets like a much heavier bleed and like significantly worse cramps. So I
Yeah.
know it does like it does and can affect people. Um, and I wouldn't say this in many other situations, but I do believe that you should try and continue moving and training, and there is research out there that shows that movement will help alleviate some of like the pain symptoms. So I would very much encourage you to continue training. Maybe just changing if it was like a high intensity day, if that's going to be too much, to just like a lower intensity movement.
Yeah. I think that that is some good advice. And obviously, it's hard for us to talk about it because everyone does go through different things, but and different pain thresholds, I guess. But yeah, as you said, like even jumping on a concept two bike and just moving, and like at least that way you're still getting some movement in your day, but just changing it up instead of stopping training for the day, just change it up around your cycle if you are struggling with that pain or hormones. Um, yeah.
I'm gonna skip the next one because it's basically the same question, just worded differently. Um, and then the next one, I'm curious your thoughts on. This person asks, "What are some ways that women's training differs from men? Do you feel like it does differ?"
Um, no.
I'm gonna press you a little bit on this, and I don't know if like your schooling has gotten too far in depths into this, but from what I have read into, one of the things that females need to be more careful of nutrition wise with training is that we should not be training fasted, which is something that is like encouraged in
Correct.
some outlets out there, where there are times where it's okay for men to potentially train fasted, and that's just maybe a difference in nutrition and training there. But I don't know how much research you've been able to get into
Yeah.
that.
Um, I guess women, yeah, nutrition wise, women have to be so much more careful with like um what we're eating and the type of foods we're eating for our hormone levels, which is what I think you're referring to. Um, in terms of like training fasted, I believe that most people shouldn't train fasted, but that's just like my opinion. And also like research backed to some degree. But in terms of yeah, females versus men, um, it's so important for females to be consuming those calories and certain type of calories before they are training for sure. Because yeah, women we just require a different type of energy production to be able to manage our hormone levels. So I haven't delved completely into that, but we have sort of touched on it in our study so far. But what's your opinion on that?
I mean, personally, I don't feel like my body would be able to put out any sort of effort training fasted. As soon as I wake up, like the first thing I'm going for is like getting something into my body. For me, before food, actually, I try and get like
Yeah,
some sort of greens shake in.
yeah,
Um, and then food. But I do, but like that in itself has some calories, and then I
Yeah.
add in. But I don't, I don't think there's any way I would be able to do anything productive if if I didn't eat before training.
Yeah. And like this is also could vary person to person. I'm not just saying it's because I'm a female, but even to the point, James versus myself, I'm the exact same as you. I wake up and I'm hungry. Like I pretty much eat straight away, and it depends on like my training for the day. But I will always eat something before I train, whereas James, I think he's slowly coming around to the idea of eating before he trains, but he can go hours without eating, and I am definitely not there. So whether or not that's female versus male or just person versus person, I'm not sure, but I'm the same as you. Definitely need some pre-training nutrition.
Yeah, I'm also like kind of curious with your thoughts. There's so much research coming out right now with the importance of athletes and taking in calories even while they're working out and making sure that they're continuously getting those carbs. And there's like people are making breakthroughs because they're making sure that they're fueled not just before but also during.
Yeah. And I love this like because I think people are really starting to understand and come around to the idea of like food is good. You know, like a few years ago, I don't know if it's a generational thing, but I feel like people were like scared of eating almost. And now people are really understanding the importance of sports nutrition and fueling for performance. I'm sure there's questions in there about nutrition that we'll get to.
My next
But
couple are so
do you
I'll
want
let
to
you.
ask? Because I was just gonna. What are those questions?
So the first one was, what are your thoughts on overall nutrition while being a hybrid athlete? So this is a very
Yeah,
broad question, and
yeah,
I think you could take it in multiple different directions. But let me narrow it down. Do you think that there's different nutrition strategies for a hybrid athlete versus maybe a pure runner or a pure strength athlete?
yeah. Definitely in terms of like endurance versus strength versus hybrid, I think for sure. It's all very without. I think people do overcomplicate it a lot, though. It's like if you're consuming enough calories in a day, then don't overcomplicate how much you like how early you should be eating before a workout or how many grams you should be eating. It's like if you're consuming enough in the day, your body should be fueled enough. However, if you want to get down to like the nitty gritty, I was just going to say, I listened to a podcast the other day, and I'm not sure if you've heard this analogy. But if you think of our energy as like a fuel tank of a car, and so you want that to be topped up, and then however long your previous meal was before, your body has been using that as fuel. So you want to keep, for example, if you sleep for 8 hours and your meal was just before you went to bed, you wake up in the morning and even just sleeping, your body has been using the energy. So you wake up in the morning and your tank is already lower just from functioning, just from literally living. So I really like that analogy because, as we were saying, we enjoy, like, we need to eat as we wake up. So if I'm training first thing in the morning, my tank is already at a lower level just because I haven't eaten in 8 hours. So we want to top that up. And then depending on the workout you're doing, so if you're going for a long run, obviously you're going to be using more energy. Depends on the intensity of the workout. But that's why I think it's very important to even just have a banana, or if you're training first thing early in the morning, have liquid carbs or, a gel, just something in there to top that tank up. So then, because you're only going to train better, you might be able to get through the workout. Your body's not going to shut down if you don't have it, but you're not going to be training to your optimal level. So I really like that analogy of like the tank and like constantly topping it up.
I like it because it encourages my constant snacking.
Yes, yes, exactly. And it really does come down to the type of training you're doing, I think. And like obviously if you're doing multiple sessions a day, it yeah. Obviously like carbs are your primary energy source. So that's you want to be ideally, some people enjoy eating more fats, but fats are also an energy source. But if you think about carbs being your most readily available energy source, so you can use that quicker and have a more powerful and stronger workout, or you can run for longer, sort of thing.
Have
But that's
you
my opinion.
made any recent in the past 9 months changes to your nutrition that you've felt like has made a big difference in your energy levels or performance levels?
100%. I feel like for me, I feel like I've nailed my nutrition, like where I'm at right now. It really works for me. And it's as simple as um, I actually used to go out for my run. Like I love running in the morning. I wake up and I go for a run straight away. I used to run without eating anything before. And I've now started. I have a small piece of sourdough toast with honey and a banana before I run. And honestly, the way that that makes me feel, I literally feel like I'm like, why isn't everyone doing this? Like, this makes me feel like I could run for hours and hours. And it's just as simple as that. Um, so I found that works for me. And then I also have, do you guys have LCM bars in the US?
I don't think so, or at least
It,
I haven't heard of them.
it's pretty much like when you're a kid, your parents put it in your lunchbox, and it's like I don't actually know, it's like rice bubbles almost. It's pretty much pure sugar. I always have that before I do a CrossFit class, and I always have that before my CrossFit class. And it once again just gives me so much energy. I'm like ready to go. So they're the changes I've made, and I feel like they really work for me. Um, but yeah, what about yourself? I've
Probably two big ones. One for a long time, and I'm sorry to any vegetarian or vegan listeners out there. I definitely uplift that, but I for a long time was avoiding red meat, and
mm,
I've been adding it back in over the past couple months, and I've noticed like a huge difference in my energy levels from that. I think I
do you think
was
that's were you low in iron? Do you think it's to
um
do with the
so
iron intake?
I did get some blood tests done over the summer. And it said my iron and my ferritin levels were fine, but again, like
Mm,
normal and fine for like an everyday person is probably not the same as normal and fine for
yeah,
somebody who's trying to be an athlete.
yeah,
So while they were within the normal range, um, I think potentially they weren't as high as they should have been for somebody who's training as much as we are.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I do think that's probably a big part of it. Also, um, while I do suggest and encourage people to take creatine, my body has never responded very well to it. It actually gives me a lot of gut distress. So I think
Okay.
since I'm not taking it, being able to get more of it from a food source has been super helpful.
I think that's so cool that you touched on that as well, because once again, everyone is so individual, and the amount of research out there that creatine is so good for you, but obviously it doesn't work for you. So you've had to look alternatively. And I think that's a really cool point to touch on. Um, because in the last few months, I've started taking creatine, and it's hard to tell whether something works or not, but works fine for me. And I feel like it's been a really good supplement, but obviously that's yeah, like you're not saying it's a bad supplement, but it just doesn't suit your body type. So that's really cool that you've been able to find that elsewhere. What's a good food source that has creatine in it?
I mean, the red meat, it definitely has a ton of it, which is why I think adding that in has
Interesting.
been really helpful.
Right.
And it's not nearly the amount that I could get from a supplement. And maybe I just need to try different brands. Maybe the brand that I was using wasn't working. I did try two different ones, but maybe I need to explore that a little bit more because I do think that there's a ton of benefit in being able to take that supplement. And I think I'm
I
missing
feel like
out.
it's quite common that creatine can not sit well with people. Maybe I think because it does retain a lot of water weight, or I don't know if that's the right thing to say, but it can make people quite like bloated as well because it, I don't know,
I was
retains.
having a lot of stomach distress, which like was very
Hmm.
uncomfortable.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. Well, at least you're having your red meat now.
Yeah. And then the other one that I wanted to make sure I added in to encourage people to do is I've been, as I mentioned before, fueling a lot more in the middle of my workouts and my runs, and I bring a ton with me, and maybe I don't use all of it, but I'm getting a lot of carbs in when I go out for a
Yeah,
run, and even if it's not technically a long run, like I'm bringing it in and I'm using it.
yeah, yeah. So have you actually found that that's like you feel a lot better
I
before and
definitely
after, or
feel
like
better
during?
during,
Yeah,
but my hope is that it also is aligning with the research out there and that it aids in recovery,
yeah,
to make sure that you're not like trying to catch up on what you're missing while you're working out. Like if you're on top of it while you're in the middle of it, your recovery is supposed to be
yeah,
better and faster. So,
yeah.
um,
Because
I
once
haven't
again,
done
like,
studies on myself to say whether or not that's true, but I am in hopes that that's working.
and if it's working, like it's, yeah, like in my opinion, I'm like more calories the better, especially with the amount that you're training. Like it's not gonna go to waste. Put it
Yeah.
that way. It's there. The energy's there to be used.
Yeah.
And as you said, like it makes sense that it could help with recovery because you're not depleting yourself. You're not getting to that point of where you're trying to every little bit of like carbs you consume. It's not just like it's already there to be used. So yeah, I think that that could be so beneficial for people as well.
I don't think there's any way we're gonna get to all of the questions, so let me know when you want me to like kind of start stopping it off. But there is like another nutrition one that I definitely want to ask you.
Yeah,
Um, so
let's do
they're
it.
asking about recovery and nutrition leading up into a race. Like, do you have any suggestions for that?
Recovery and nutrition leading into a race. My biggest thing is don't change anything leading into a race. I'm like, there's what's the point in going from eating certain type of food and then all of a sudden changing it up on your body. I think staying consistent is the biggest thing. Obviously, if we're talking like 48 hours out from a race or even 24 hours out from a race, I think adding in keeping your meals still quite similar, but adding in maybe an extra meal that is higher in carbs just to like really store those, like get your glycogen stores ready to go. Um, but it's so hard to say because everyone's so different. But yeah, I just believe like there's no point changing your nutrition. And like with you guys, you'd agree, Lauren. Like I see when we go traveling for James's races, it is really hard to stay consistent. But you really just have to be so prepared with, we bring Tupperwares, our Tupperware containers everywhere. We've got oats all the time. We've got microwavable rice all the time just to keep that consistency, making sure you're eating the same. You're not under fueling because you've got no supermarkets around you because you're staying in a random hotel. Like, so I don't know if that answers the question, but I wouldn't change too much except for the fact maybe adding in a few, like an extra cut, really carby, or even high protein as well, before your race.
I agree with that. There is one thing that I do change in about like 48 hours leading in. I try to cut out as much fiber as I can.
Okay,
Um,
yeah, that's obviously for so you're not like bloated or
and to better control my bathroom, I
yeah,
guess,
yeah,
habits. I don't
free,
know the
yeah,
best word for that.
yeah,
Just it is only the race is about an hour long, so it's not super long, but um you still want to be in control of that as much as possible because if you have to go to the bathroom in the middle of that race, like it makes it very uncomfortable. And
Yeah, that's a good
and
point.
it's hard to open up to the stride that you would want to open up to, like if you're trying to make sure you're not going to the bathroom in the middle of the race.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that is why I try and start cutting out fiber about 48 hours, or
yeah.
at
Okay,
least
because
limiting the amount of fiber that I'm taking in.
I feel like in my general diet, I have a lot of fiber. Do you find that you have to change a like your meals too much to sorry, like a whole lot?
Like taking out like more greens.
Yeah,
Maybe if I like instead of apples, like I'll have applesauce or something like
yeah, yeah.
so.
Okay,
So
yeah,
like pureed kind of things instead.
yeah. And I think that comes down to like obviously your experience of racing as well. Like you know that that works for you, and you know how your body works. So, I think that's actually a really good tip to take
Um,
away. Yeah,
and I would say like especially if it's a two race weekend for you or a multiple race weekend, because your body goes through a lot of distress in a race. So
yeah,
I've noticed that my second and or if I'm doing a third race in the weekend, my stomach is in knots and like super unhappy for anything but my first race.
yeah, yeah.
So,
That's fair because your body's just, as you said, under so much stress. A
yeah.
high rocks rate, your body does not like high rocks racing.
No.
And then I think this isn't necessarily nutrition, but if you are making sure like straight after a race as well, and even before, sorry, getting your like electrolytes and sodium in is so important, like hydration, because once again, what your body goes through, the amount that you sweat, um, your body is so depleted from those vitamins, minerals, sodium, everything. So just making sure that you're getting it in beforehand, but then also immediately after, I think is so important.
And that can be really, really difficult to do after because there is a ton of excitement. Like things get forgotten. Sometimes you get dragged off
Yes.
by friends or family or drug testers or
Mm,
so maybe like creating like a separate little drawstring bag of like what you want immediately after your race and either having that close by you or with a family member or somebody that could hand
yeah,
it to you. So that like if you do get tied up and you're busy, it's accessible.
that's a good point. Yeah.
High Rocks training and race tips for first timers. This person's curious if we have any suggestions for both their training and racing if they haven't done a High Rocks yet.
Okay. Do you want to start us off?
Sure. Um, I want to, before I even get to the training, I want to talk about the race because I think it's just so natural for us to put so much pressure on ourselves for a
Mm-hmm.
race, especially we hype it up. We have so many expectations. We go into it and it could be very nerve-wracking, I think, for many people. Um, High Rocks is so dynamic and there's so many interchanging pieces um, and different energy systems that we're going in and out of. And yes, we can do a simulation and kind of feel what it's going to feel like, but it's never going to be the same as what
Agreed.
it is going to be on race day. So, as much as we want to have goals for that first one, I really and truly believe you need to go into that first one without expectations and just for the experience to see like don't go and like not try. Like go in and go as hard as you can so we can set like a a time and we can get paces and your time chip is going to track everything for you. We're going to see like how you started out in your runs and like where you were by run 8 and like whether or not you're within a close time range or if you fell really far off. We're going to see how many people were ahead of you on each station. Like we can figure out what to work on and maybe in the farmer's carry it says you're like 200th, but maybe between 200th to 100th that's 5 seconds. Like do we really
Yeah.
need to focus a ton on that? Probably not.
Yeah.
So like my biggest piece of advice for the race for your first one is go in, go hard, experience it, and then we can set expectations after that. But don't
Yeah.
set expectations before the first one because there's so much to learn in terms of like energy management and going in and out of stations and what it's like to have to surge past a group of people because they're in the way on the run course. And like now you just did a 20-second stride, which took a lot out of you. And were you able to like get back to your normal pace after that, or now are you running slower? So that
Yeah.
like for racing, that's like by far my number one if it's your first race.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Hey, and I think it is so easy to put a lot of pressure on yourself before your first race, and you see everyone like setting a time based on the simulation they did in the gym, and it's just not the same thing at all. Um, and I remember my first race. It was literally only last year or 2 years ago now. But yeah, I did it with James, and it's you're never going to get the same race as your first one. I feel like your first one's always the most fun because, as you said, every single thing you're doing is a learning curve because you've never done this before. So it's all new to you. Even if you've done it in the gym, it's completely different. And it is just so much fun, just like taking everything in. And then from that race forward, you've got data to work with, which can be a good thing, but also a bad thing because you're putting more pressure on yourself. But yeah, I agreed with that first one. Just really take it all in and understand how your body reacts to certain stations, to certain paces. And then from there, that's when you can really set your target goals for yourself. But yeah, I found I went into my first race thinking I would feel a certain way and thinking I would be good at certain stations and I wasn't, or thinking I'd be bad and I was good. You just have no idea. So yeah, just take it all in on your first race, I think.
And Hyrox seems to be very open to like changing and adapting and kind of trying to continuously better themselves, which I'm appreciative of. And like when I first started racing, the sleds were 25 meters, not total. Like we still had to do the 50 meters, but instead of a 12 and a half, 12 and a half, like
Ah,
four
I didn't know
times,
that.
it was just a down and back push and down and back pull. And like the pole specifically, because now the rope is twice as long and like to get the tension in it was so hard.
That
Um,
first, oh, I couldn't even imagine trying to pull that 25 meters. Like it would have taken half the length to even get the tension on
it was
it.
wild. It was so wild. But just like knowing that things like can still potentially change as they continue to try
Mm,
and grow and adapt and see what's going to work for like the biggest population. So and that's pretty cool. Like we're going to get times right now that we can try and beat and then know that in the future maybe like our goal and target has changed because maybe they've adapted something else. Like who knows?
yeah. Do you remember, this is a random question, do you remember what your first time was when you raced solo?
Yeah, it was. Well, I'm sure Anthony knows exactly what my time was,
I'm
but
sure he does too.
I mean, I know like approximately it was around like a 111
Yep.
something.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, I like we got to the sled and I saw like one of the girls that I thought was going to be the best sled pusher out there, like it took her forever to move it and she lost her shoes and like then she tried pushing it without her shoes on and yes, I'm supposed to be like in the middle of my own race, but at the same time I'm fascinated by like
You're like,
what's
what's
going
happening?
on in these other lanes. But it was a different world then too. So
Yeah.
I came into the wall balls like 60, I'm not kidding, 60 reps behind one of the girls. And like, because it was an uncommon movement for many people at the time, like, not just myself, but like another girl ended up passing this girl that had
Wow.
60 reps on us. So, like, you don't see that now. If you have a 60 rep lead on the wall balls with
Yeah.
somebody, like,
Yeah.
you're
especially in the female field who are
yeah,
doing
they're
pretty
not
much,
like
they're all doing it unbroken.
yeah, it's the experience is night and day in terms of
Yeah.
like what it was to what it is now.
Yeah. Which is pretty cool. Like you've really seen the sport evolve and the athletes evolve, which is a really cool perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean if somebody has a 6 rep wall ball lead on you, like you're probably not going to catch
No,
them.
yeah. Yeah.
Think of
Yeah.
like 10 times that amount.
Yeah. That's
Wild.
crazy.
The next question, what mental strategies do you use when fatigue sets in later in the race or late in the later stages of the race? Do you have any mental strategies that you use when you're getting tired? I guess towards the back half of the race.
Mental strategies. Oh, I don't know. I'm sure you've got some fantastic ones that you can share.
So I don't know if this would necessarily be a strategy or just makes me sound crazy. But I am so proud of myself when I get into that pain cave. Like, because
Yeah.
I know how hard I had to
You're
work to
working.
get to that pain cave that like I'm excited to get there.
Yeah.
So like once I finally reach that point, like I don't want to let it go. Like once I feel the point of like, oh man, like this hurts, I'm pressing hard, like I don't want to ease up on that. Like I worked so hard to get there. So maybe if you don't have that somewhat psychotic perspective on it, like maybe trying to reframe it instead of I'm scared of this potentially going to hurt to like I'm excited and I can't wait until it hurts.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Wow. Little bit psychotic, Lauren, but no,
Like
I respect that. And especially because of it would be how hard you work and the volume and intensity of the training you do. It would take a lot for you to get in that real pain cave. So I can fully respect where you're coming from. I'm probably not. I probably don't enjoy the pain cave as much as you, hence why I'm not an elite athlete. Um, but more so like I do, I guess I reflect in a race if I'm like really, really hurting and like I just think about like the training and the hard work. And I guess more so like I am proud of myself for just giving this a crack. Um, I guess more so I do race recreationally more as like a hobby than a profession. So it's more, um, yeah, like I'm just proud of myself for actually doing this because I remember once upon a time I was just a spectator on the side watching James and I said I would never do a high rocks race. So it's just I guess reflecting on the how much work you've actually put in to get to that point and just keep on going. You're not far off. So
right, but and leaning into that, like you should be anybody doing this race should be proud
yeah.
that they're doing it because none of us have like been able like as kids if we were to be shown this race would we have thought like or at least I don't know I wouldn't have thought like oh I can complete this or complete this and
Yeah.
not be dead after. I remember specifically watching like a morning talk show host that my parents had on when I was in, I don't know, middle school or high school. And this celebrity talked about how every day to make sure that he at least got something in, he started with a 5 mile run every day. And that was just like his bank in terms of and he would probably do more after that but like just to make sure he got something in he did
Yeah.
5 miles and my frame of thought at that time was like oh my God like that is so far. He does 5 miles
Yeah.
every day. And then it's just wild to like see the perspective
But yeah.
of like from then till now that like I
Yeah.
wouldn't I don't know, not that 5 miles is nothing, but I don't look at that and think like, oh my
As
God, this
long
person's doing 5 miles every day. So
but it has and I guess like the thing there your perspective has changed but also it hasn't been an overnight thing like
no,
you've
no, this is
slowly
like from
built
middle
on
school till
Yeah.
My
So
20-year
like
reunion for high school is coming up in like 2 years.
exactly. Yeah. So like over time, you have built on your volume. Like once upon a time, 5 miles was a long distance for you, but now you can reflect and be like, oh my gosh, look where I've come from, sort of thing, which I think is really cool. And
But
back to
that's
the
something we should be proud of. Like that's
definitely,
huge.
yeah,
Like just that mindset shift is like something to be proud of. Like let alone the accomplishments of like completing these things.
yeah. And James often does, because I'm quite hard on myself sometimes, and I think we all are at times, but James likes to remind me that even for myself, like I don't have a running background, I guess. I started running when I met him. And 5 kilometers, so 5 kilometers, I don't even know what that is in miles, but 5 kilometers was a struggle for me to finish when I first met him. And even to the point like when we were living in Scotland, which wasn't that long ago, um, like less than a year ago, I was only running once a week because my body only allowed me to run once a week. And now I've built up to running 6 times a week. So things like that, it's just like, I guess going back to the original question, in a race, just think about how far you truly have come. And, like it's pretty incredible. Anyone that's training for this sport, training, let alone doing the race, is just very inspirational. And it's not an easy thing to do. So you can give yourself a little bit of credit.
Yeah. I know you talked about like 10 to 15 minutes, been about that. We have a lot of like I'm so sorry if we haven't gotten to your question. I'll save
We'll
them
do a
so that
part two.
if we do a part two, we can elaborate on that. But just going off of what you were saying, this one last question kind of tags on to that. It says, how has your training changed over like over the past like 2 to 4 years until now? Would you say,
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about the change in just like the past year. It seems like it's been
Crazy.
massive.
Yeah, and like my love for it has developed as well, which I think has encouraged the change of my training. So I've actually like fully had a switch. I guess I was on your programming as well, which I loved at the time, but I got to a point where you know, I don't know if you've ever had this, but I just needed a change in terms of um just my training and my day to day. I sort of wasn't keen to do a high rocks race. So I was like, I just need to change something. Um,
And
and
you're in
I,
classes now too, right?
yeah, so
And
I
that's
joined a CrossFit
huge.
gym.
I think like the community aspect of it is like,
Yeah.
it's
And so without realizing it, I think that's what I was missing. At the time, I didn't realize what it was, but training by myself every day because James and I go to different gyms as well. I think I was probably getting a bit lonely and wasn't having that support system around me, like at the gym. So I joined a CrossFit gym. I've never done CrossFit before, but that's been so much fun for me.
so
Just
much fun.
having, yeah, and learning. I'm like learning how to do handstand walks and just
It's
random
so
stuff.
much
But
fun. I
yeah, so
have a
I,
hard time with it in that I like love to race people. So like when I get into the
yes.
class environments, I think I go a lot harder than I should. Sorry, you
And
keep
I
going.
can relate to that as well. I am so competitive. So I'm just like, and because I think most CrossFit gyms would do this. I don't know, but ours, you like write your score up on the board. So if I'm doing like an afternoon class and there's already been like a fair few classes in the morning, I'm like, I've got a target to beat and I will do anything to beat that score. So I think there's probably pros and cons to that, but I've really enjoyed having the community sort of aspect in my training again. And that's not to say I won't want to change it up, but for the time being, that's sort of how I've developed my training just in the last few weeks, actually.
No, I love that. And it does make it so much more fun to do it with people
Yep,
and like the joy of daily racing, honestly, is
yep,
what it is. Like
yep. That little bit of a like adrenaline spike. But yeah, so that's where I'm at. What about you? Have you
Um,
changed your training up much
a
or?
ton, so
Yeah.
much. It's significantly different than it was 2, 4 years ago. This person is writing. I'm just going to touch on probably the biggest change that I've made, and that is, I mean, ever since I was like a teenager, I was going out for easy runs. Like I started adding it in high school because I was joining a lacrosse team and I wanted to, everybody else had been doing it for years and I was just jumping into the team. So I would wake up every morning and take my lacrosse stick and practice cradling a lacrosse ball for a couple miles in the morning before I would
Wow.
go to school. I would like run down to like the church and then I'd practice like throwing the ball back and forth against the wall and then I'd catch it and then I'd like run back and
That's so cool.
practice cradling. So, but that just developed like I kept doing constant even after like lacrosse was over. Easy miles, just that's just what I did. I just loved to run long and slow. Once I had Lily, um, I needed to be a lot more strategic with my time, and that is when I introduced quality work into my running, and I was not doing any. I mean, no, like
Mm.
all my quality was coming from a CrossFit session. I was doing no quality work before I had her, and then after I had her to be more precise and useful with my time, I started adding in quality work so that
So by quality work, are you referring to like your threshold
yeah,
running
like
and like,
my threshold,
yeah,
like
okay.
that's when I started adding in threshold training
Yep.
and the amount of improvement I have seen in running since doing
Mm.
that is like astronomical.
Cool,
And
yeah.
I think like obviously there was a ton of help in having like such a huge base of like 20 years of just easy running
Easy running, yeah.
before adding in any quality sessions. But what's really cool with that is like I get to keep tracing all of this stuff because I had never explored like anything but easy running. So my times are still getting faster, and that's so much fun to be able
Yeah.
to see like and just explore the running world and like how fast can I get?
So, did you only introduce your threshold running when you had Lily? Like when
Yeah,
you
it
really
was
had,
after I had
wow,
her probably I might have been 4 months postpartum was when I first started adding it in.
that's really cool. So you were racing obviously before that, like
Hmm.
high rocks, but then obviously other things. So that was purely just
That
easy
was
run.
just easy runs and CrossFit.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot has
That's pretty
changed.
cool, yeah. And in a way, like still, as you said, you're still improving, which is just like so exciting that you can
Mhm.
still, build on where you're at right now.
Right. And that's motivating, like to know
Yes.
that like you can still get better and like you're still
Yes.
seeing changes. Like that's incredibly motivating.
Yeah. So do you regularly retest your threshold pace?
Um, no, yes, I do retest it as often as I should. No. I err on the side of caution in that I usually because when you run your thresholds, you'll get like a range of pace of where your threshold should be. And
Mm-hmm.
technically, like if we were to be following what professional runners do, they're doing it every single threshold run session that they're doing to make sure that on that day they're in their threshold zone
Yep.
because it does change on a day-to-day basis. I am not that precise with it. I get like a generic idea of where I'm at and I test
Yep.
it and I get a range. And I'm super conservative in that I don't want to overwork because I want to make sure I'm as available as possible to continue to do all the other training that we're
Or
trying
the
to
other.
do
Yep.
as a hybrid racer. So I run at um, the lowest
Right
I
at the
can
back of the
the
range.
lowest speed I can while still being in my threshold zone.
Yep. Yep. And that's what I believe James does as well, based on Anthony's advice. Um, yeah, because and then I think that's really really interesting, and I think the whole thing about being a hybrid athlete, you have so much other aspects to train as well.
There's so much to try and touch on.
Yeah. No, that's cool. I didn't realize that you've only been doing threshold for short amount of time.
Yeah, it's been like a little over 2 years now.
Yeah. Well, I'm so excited to see how much more you can improve from where you're already at.
Yeah. And same with James. I think he's fairly new to that type of run training as well. So I would assume that he has a significant amount more room to improve.
Since starting with you guys, actually, he got introduced to it. I think he knew about threshold training, but had never implemented it. And as we were just saying, like, that's the exciting part. He's only getting better, which is just incredible.
It's
so exciting.
It's like motivating, like incredibly motivating. We like, who doesn't love to see progress?
Yeah. And it's so hard, I guess, with you guys because you are at the top end of the sport and there's almost only so many things that you can improve to get better. So obviously running being the predominant aspect of Hyrox, like if you can just continue to improve that, then who knows where it could take you.
I know, it's exciting.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining me. Thank you everybody who's listening and or watching for listening to the girls this week instead of the guys. I did not bring you any charts. I'm sorry. I'm sure you will get more of those next week when Anthony is back with JK. I also want to apologize for not getting to everybody's questions, but we're about an hour and a half in. So a part 2, we will make sure to address more of the questions that you guys sent in. But thank you so much for sending them.
Yes. And as Anthony said, I think last podcast, let's try to get this as the most viewed or listened to podcast. Yeah, the girls.
Hopefully we did okay as replacements. And
yes.
Good luck, everybody, in your next events coming up. Make sure to enjoy your training. Again, if you need a change, like Georgie had mentioned, like there's so many outlets out there for you to try some new things to keep it interesting. Like myself, I'm going to be looking for a swim team to kind of like change it up a little bit.
Yep, very cool. And then, good luck in Vegas, Lauren. And
I will see you soon.
I know. We actually get to see each other in the flesh, which is exciting. Well, good luck with your training and everything. And thank you, listeners. We appreciate you listening.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
All right.
Until next time.
Thank you for listening to the Hybrid Coaching Podcast. If you'd like to get in contact with James Kelly to seek out some coaching or for general questions and inquiries, please go to Instagram and find him at jk.jameskelly. Or you can find him and Georgie Vesely on YouTube at James Kelly and Georgie Vesely. If you'd like to contact Anthony or seek out programming or coaching questions from the Hybrid Engine, please go to Instagram at the Hybrid Engine or at a Wild Parasini. Thank you again. Have a great day.